What's up, guys? Today I am joined by a very special guest. You all know him, you all love him. Jessie Naylor from Last Second Sports. How you doing tonight, Jessie?
I'm doing fantastic. It's funny. We were talking about your intro before we went live, and I think that's the only pass that Jimmy actually hit an open use check right there. So it
Yeah.
had to be a part of the intro. I'm doing great. I think you might have overtalked though. I don't think everybody loves me, but even if you tune in to hate me, appreciate that you're here. What's up, Amin? How you been, man?
I'm good, man. It's been a while. I think our last stream was together was what, a couple of months ago? I think like
In a
April,
minute.
May, I think, or even before that. So it's been a while,
Yep.
but I'm glad to be back on with you. And before we jump into grading every draft pick, there was some breaking news a couple of days ago, and it was not Niners related, but it did involve the divisions the Niners play in, which is the NFC West. And another quarterback got a big payday, and his name is Kyler Murray, obviously the first overall pick, who went before Nick Bosa, who we'll be discussing later on in this stream. Kyler Murray signed an extension, 5 years, $230 million, $160 million guaranteed. So now I ask you the question, Jesse, do you think Kyler Murray deserved this contract?
Man, well, deserve is a loaded word. I mean, if somebody's willing to pay it to you, then you deserve it technically. But, and I don't know, Kyler Murray's kind of a conundrum to me because Kyler Murray is a guy who I had firmly in my top 10 going into last year. And I think his skill set says that he's a top 10 quarterback. He's as dynamic as they come outside of Lamar Jackson. I mean, really, it's those two with their legs have that just dynamic play. And frankly, I mean, he has a stronger arm than I think Lamar Jackson does. But where those two separate themselves and where I have Lamar now as a top 5 quarterback is the mental side of things. And we're starting to see that come out more and more that Kyler really struggles with some of the mental aspects of being a quarterback, whether that's leadership, what have you. And he struggles to stay healthy a bit. So, I think Arizona, this is a team that tends to not win a lot of games. So for them, I think this is a great signing, but man, that's a lot of money to pay a quarterback that is, top 13, top 14 range. I don't know. I mean, this is kind of where the league's at. 2, 3 years, I'm sure that won't be that much, but for right now, man, that's a lot of freaking money for a quarterback that is not a top 10 quarterback at this very moment.
Yep, I mean, the Cardinals kind of had to pay Kyler Murray this much money because that's just the way the league is going, right? Like a couple years ago, Jimmy Garoppolo I think was the highest paid quarterback in the league, and that was what, 160 million. And now, moving a couple years forward, Kyler Murray's getting 160 million dollars guaranteed,
Yeah.
right? So like that just shows you how much the league has changed over the last couple of years. And like you said, I don't think in a couple of years, like let's say 2024, 2025, like this contract is going to kind of be like the Jimmy G contract. And then guys will be getting 300 million and maybe 190 guaranteed, 200 guaranteed, 200 million guaranteed. So I mean, did Kyler Murray deserve this contract? I mean, obviously the Cardinals kind of had to pay him this much money because it's hard to find a good quarterback in the NFL. And I think the NFL is a quarterback driven league. And if you look at the Niners over the last couple of years, you don't have a quarterback and Jimmy Garoppolo was hurt. You can't win football games and you can't necessarily succeed without a quarterback. Now, there are exceptions. Going back to that Ravens, I think it was 2001, where they won a Super Bowl with kind of a mediocre quarterback, but it's not likely that you win a Super Bowl with an okay or backup quarterback. And, obviously another exception is Nick Foles, but Kyler Murray, they had to pay him. He deserved this contract because they kind of had to pay him, and he deserved it. He's not bad, but I think one thing that the Cardinals kind of have to do better this upcoming season is that the Cardinals have a great start the first half of the season, right? And even last year, I think they were like 8-0, and then they lost to Green Bay. And in the second half of the season, the Cardinals fall off. Kyler Murray starts playing poorly down the stretch towards nearing the end of the season. So I think Kyler Murray kind of has to be more consistent throughout the whole season. And he's kind of got to be a little bit more healthy throughout the whole season because we haven't seen Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray doesn't get injured, but he gets banged up nearing the second half of the season. But overall, I mean, the Cardinals kind of had to pay him this kind of money.
Well, people make jokes about Kyler and his height. That's that's neither here nor there, but the height really is an issue. I mean, he does struggle over the middle. All throwing charts show it. He's great when it comes to deep out patterns or fades on outside the numbers where he can see what's going on, but it's hard to build the scheme around a quarterback that just simply cannot throw over the middle consistently, and he can't do it. It's also why Russell Wilson, who's even taller than he is, has struggled with that over the last couple of years, and that's why people are saying he's regressing, because he's just not seeing the field when it comes to over the middle passes. And it's a big part of the game, and it's important. So we'll see. I mean, I think, as good as he is physically, I'm not too worried about it. I mean, as a 49er fan, that's the way that I have to look at it. Am I worried that Kyler Murray is the quarterback for the next, 5-6 years or whatever? No, I'm not too worried about it. I mean, I think Trey Lance is going to come along. I think Trey Lance will be a top 10 quarterback, and, you know, Arizona will be paying their guy a lot of money and probably not winning a lot of games long term. So no, for me as a 49er fan, not too concerned about it.
Another side question: do you think the Cardinals can win a Super Bowl with Kyler Murray?
It's crazy because people get mad when you talk about mobile quarterbacks. There's a stigma tied to them, right? When guys that are run first or what have you, or as athletic as Kyler Murray is. The problem is that we haven't seen a mobile quarterback like that actually win a ring, and so until it happens, it's kind of hard to say that they can. I mean, if I'm betting between him and Lamar, again, the two most mobile guys in the league, I'm going with Lamar. I think Lamar actually has a chance to win one, and Kyler, for everything that he is great at, strong arm, very mobile. Again, he's undersized. He doesn't seem to have everything that it takes to be a great quarterback mentally. And I think the mental aspect to me is the biggest thing. I mean, mentally, I'll take a quarterback that's mentally all there and maybe not as physically capable as Kyler versus what Kyler is right now. And I think that that's a big problem. If you're 4 years into your career and you're struggling to show leadership, couldn't be me. I know it's not Trey Lance. That's all I care about.
Yep, and I mean, I remember a couple of months ago, especially I think during the Super Bowl, there was reports coming out that Kyler Murray got upset after that Rams loss, and he was yelling at teammates in the locker room, and how some of the players didn't like Kyler Murray, and then he scrubbed his Instagram account, right? So there was a little bit of like controversy and news there, but I mean, he got his payday. And about that Super Bowl, I mean, it's never been done, like you said. It's never been done. It hasn't been necessarily a mobile quarterback that's won a Super Bowl before. And now I'm not going to say that Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals can't win a Super Bowl, but is it likely that the Arizona Cardinals win a Super Bowl? No, not really, especially if you look at, number one, the division that they play in the NFC, and then let's say hypothetically they do make it to the Super Bowl. You're not necessarily going to be able, it's not going to be the easiest to beat a team like the Bills or the Chargers or, the Chiefs or the Ravens or the Bengals. It's going to be really hard to do. So I'm not going to rule them out and saying they can't, but it's very and highly unlikely that the Cardinals do win a Super Bowl with Kyler Murray.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, thinking of athletic quarterbacks that have actually won rings, I mean, two most athletic would probably be like John Elway and Steve Young, right? But those guys, again, physically have the stature to hold up and sit in the pocket, make throws over the middle, and use their athleticism secondary. And so, with Kyler, again, struggling to throw over the middle, kind of tends to get in those issues where he has to use that mobility as like that number one go-to. And unless he can figure that out, unfortunately, I mean, it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough. And like I said, I feel like Lamar is making those strides and he's making those changes, and you see it from year to year, just how much better of a thrower he's become. And although he's not as gifted from an arm talent standpoint, I believe, as Kyler Murray, he can still make all the throws. And I think mentally he's all there. So yeah, Kyler's something is there to be desired. That's for sure.
Yep. Well, let's jump right into it. Starting off with obviously the first year that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch became the head coach and GM of the 49ers. Now, when I started watching the 49ers really heavily was 2015. And
Okay.
that was Jim Tomsula and Chip Kelly. And those years were horrible. I mean, there was some few games where the Niners would win, and then there would be other weeks where the Niners would get blown out by 40, and they'd be like, oh, okay. But, those are the first couple of years that I really started watching the 49ers heavily. And then obviously 2017, obviously Jim Tomsula gets fired, Chip Kelly gets fired, and then the new regime comes in with Shanahan and Lynch. And this was their first draft. So the 2017 NFL draft. Now, with the first selection, the San Francisco 49ers selected Solomon Thomas.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. All right. Well, now that we're reliving this, thanks for this, Amin. I forgot about how bad some of these picks were early on. Thank goodness that the 49ers were able to kind of pick up the pieces and make it look a lot better going forward. So I'm more excited to get to some of those drafts or even this draft a little bit later into it. But yeah, Solomon Thomas, I mean, there's no way around it. Not his fault. Decent football player, but nothing to write home about at that pick. Your first pick with this regime, with those quarterbacks that were on the table, this is a straight up F pick, unfortunately. And it's, again, nothing against Solomon Thomas, the player or the man, but where he was selected, 49ers definitely messed this one up. This was an F for sure.
Yep, I mean, this is pretty easy. It's an F. I mean, if you look at the Niners situation that year, 2017, the Niners had a lot of holes on that roster. But one of their biggest holes was the quarterback position. And who were your starters? I think your starter was Brian Hoyer, but then your backup was Matt Barkley. Like, you did not have good quarterbacks on your team, right? So, and then if you look at the draft, there's Deshaun Watson, Mahomes, Trubisky. Now, obviously, nobody really knew what Mahomes was going to become. Nobody knew Mahomes was going to become that good. And Mahomes, in my opinion, is the best quarterback in the league just because of what he's able to do week in and week out and the throws that he's able to make. Mahomes is special, right? Really, really special. I've never seen any quarterback like Mahomes in the NFL. Like, just throwing it sidearm, no look passes, the arm strength, just ridiculous. So obviously, none of us really knew Mahomes would be that special. So I can't really blame the Niners for not taking Mahomes. Now, Trubisky, I really didn't want Trubisky. But then Deshaun Watson. Now, obviously, looking at it now, you're like, oh, thank God the Niners didn't draft Deshaun Watson because of all those allegations and things like that. But the Niners at that time really could have used a guy like Deshaun Watson. Now, would the Niners have become Super Bowl contenders by drafting Deshaun Watson? No, but at least that spot of quarterback probably would have been filled for the next couple of years, and then you would be able to build around Deshaun Watson for the future, and you would have been able to do that. But obviously the Niners didn't go that way. They drafted Solomon Thomas. Now, he's not a bad player, but is he third pick? Is he first round, third overall good? No, not really, and not even close. So
He's not third round, first overall good.
yeah, he
You
isn't.
know what I
Like,
mean?
I mean, if the Niners drafted him in the 5th or 6th, they'd be like, okay, not bad. But for a first round pick, heck no, easy F. And I remember going on the cone for a long, long time ago, and there was another guy in the draft whose name is T.J. Watt, who went near the end of the first round. But I mean, can you imagine T.J. Watt on the 49ers?
No, first of all, I couldn't. Let me ask you this question, because we talked about, let's say they had taken a quarterback. Let's also not forget at that time Kirk Cousins was the plan, right? And then somehow they went against that plan halfway through the season and went and got Jimmy Garoppolo. But I digress. So if they had taken quarterback, obviously Watson would have been a great pick. Obviously Mahomes would have been a great pick. But Mitchell Trubisky, let's say they had taken Mitchell Trubisky, and we're looking back on it now. Do you think the grade would have still been as harsh as it was for Solomon Thomas, or would you have graded that pick higher?
If they took Mitch Trubisky,
Mm-hmm.
whew, that's a tough one. I mean, if we're basing it off how his career turned out in Chicago, I mean, I wouldn't grade it as bad. But I mean, with the 49ers, I think Mitchell Trubisky would have been a different quarterback. At least in my opinion. If Mitchell Trubisky, obviously, he would have had his ups and downs the first couple of years. But I think in 2019, if the Niners made that run, if Mitchell Trubisky was the quarterback, I think the Niners possibly could have won a Super Bowl with Mitch Trubisky if he made it that far and if he was the quarterback. So, I mean, if we were to look at if Mitch Trubisky was on the 49ers, I think Mitch Trubisky would have been a different quarterback than he was on the Bears, and I would definitely grade it differently.
I mean, even if we got Bears Mitchell Trubisky, it probably wouldn't be an F, right? Like, I look at that pick and said, worst case scenario, if they had taken the worst of the three quarterbacks, it still wouldn't have graded as bad as Solomon Thomas. We'd be like C minus, D plus, something like that, but we wouldn't have given it an F. So really, if they had just gone quarterback, regardless of who it was, the pick would have been graded higher and it wouldn't been as bad as Solomon Thomas.
Yeah.
So just an interesting way to look at things.
Yep, definitely. And I mean, still hurts, man. We didn't get TJ Watt, but I mean, we got Nick Bosa, though. But
Yeah.
yep. And then moving on to the second pick in the John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan regime, we have the 31st overall pick, Reuben Foster, linebacker out of Alabama. How would you grade this pick, Jessie?
Athletically, I mean, imagine Reuben Foster if he was mentally all there, still playing next to a great Fred Warner. How crazy that would be. But man, what makes this pick even worse, I mean, is that I remember John Lynch said after they had drafted those guys in the first round that if Solomon Thomas wasn't there, they would have gone Reuben Foster as high as 3. That's how much they liked Reuben Foster. Well, good thing they didn't.
Yep.
Either way, F, because they traded up to make it happen, right? And then the way that they talked about him as if he was going to be amazing, which athletically, sure, but man, he had some issues coming out of college. Those issues got worse once he was in the NFL, and it never worked out for him. Another F for sure.
Now, I wouldn't say it was an F. Now, the reason why I'm not giving this pick an F is because Reuben Foster was really good when he was playing. He was not bad in my opinion, right? And Reuben Foster was probably the one bright spot on that defense for that first year. And now, like you said, he wasn't mentally all there, and he had issues in college, and then they translated to the NFL. But Reuben Foster was still, in my opinion, not a great pick because obviously it didn't work out. And for your first round pick, not to be, a franchise guy or not to be still on your team to this point, obviously not great. But when Reuben Foster was playing, he was impactful. And like from an athletic standpoint, he was great. He was a great player, but he just wasn't mentally all there. So I wouldn't give it an F because for that first year, he wasn't bad, so I would probably give it maybe a D plus. Maybe I wouldn't say an F because from when Reuben Foster did play, he was still impactful. Whereas Solomon Thomas, he wasn't impactful. Like he just wasn't, right? You wouldn't see Solomon Thomas making plays, or you just wouldn't see Solomon Thomas being as big of a contributor as Reuben Foster was when he was able to play. So Reuben Foster, that pick, I would give it maybe a D or a D plus.
Yeah, I mean, he was good, right? But again, he played like 10 games his rookie year. He played 6 games the next year, and that was it, And so it's not because this one's like opposite of Solomon Thomas, right? Like Solomon Thomas just wasn't good.
Yeah.
And they had him playing out of position, which compounded on things, but an A1 person, right? Reuben Foster was the athlete, but as a person and what he was going through, he just wasn't ready to be an NFL player. So these guys are kind of polar opposites. I still have to give it an F. I mean, if you play one season worth of games, period, in your career, Like that's like that's it. Like you were a first round draft pick and you played 1 season worth of games. I don't care if it was the 16 best games I had ever seen. You played 1 season worth of games over the course of 2 seasons, and that was it. To me, it has to be an F.
I mean, we disagree on this one a little bit. I just give it a grade higher because Reuben Foster wasn't bad. He just wasn't bad. He just wasn't mentally, like you said, all there. So moving on to the next pick in the John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan regime. They did not have a second pick because they obviously went up and tried to get Reuben Foster. But we have, with round 3, pick 66, Keller Witherspoon, cornerback, who was on the team in that 2019 playoff run, then went to Seattle, and now he's with the Steelers. So how would you grade this pick, Jesse?
I'd actually give this a B. I mean, first of all, I'm not going to be as harsh, even if Akella was the worst player of all time. Like in the 3rd round, I can't ever give it an F because you're
Worst
now
player of
out
all
of the first
time.
round.
Well, I thought that was Brian Allen. Brian Allen.
No. I'm saying even if Akella was the worst player of all time,
okay.
I can't give it an F in round 3, right? But Akella was actually pretty good. I mean, and he's still in the league. He's going to probably start over in Pittsburgh, which is crazy, right? And sometimes players, the scheme fit just isn't a fit. And I feel like that was partially it with Keller Witherspoon. Also, he just, confidence-wise, he had some confidence issues, right? And for whatever reason, he was in and out of the lineup. They kept trying to force feed him as the starter, and it just didn't work out. But he put together some good games. He was a pretty dang good player in spurts. And I think the fact that he's still in the league and still producing, starting for a pretty decent defense over in Pittsburgh, or what I think will be a pretty decent defense, I got to give it a B. You know, he wasn't a world beater, but he's a good enough player to get a B in round 3.
Yep. I would give this pick, if we're strictly talking about what he did for the 49ers, I would probably give this pick maybe a B minus, because what he did for the 49ers, now he wasn't great, but for a 3rd round pick, he was pretty solid. And realistically, how many 3rd round picks really contribute to their team as much as a Keller Witherspoon do? Not really. There's not really that many 3rd round draft picks. Now there are exceptions, right? Like for the 49ers, we have Fred Warner. But there's not really that many 3rd round draft picks for majority of the teams that contributed for the 49ers as much as a Keller Witherspoon did. Right? And I mean, a Keller Witherspoon, I think, was a solid player. Now, the one moment that I always think of when I hear a Keller Witherspoon is when he got beat by Stephon Diggs in that Vikings game. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing, Keller Witherspoon? Get him out the game. But he was pretty solid overall. And like you said, went to Seattle, was pretty good there. And now he's starting for the Steelers next season, unless obviously he gets injured. But he's starting for the Steelers next season, so he is still in the league. He's a starter. He's a solid player for a 3rd round draft pick. So I would give this a B minus in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think also playing opposite of Richard Sherman can be bad for a corner's career, especially someone like Akello, who is such a man corner. Like this system that they're running now, if he was still around, would fit him very well. Right? Like oddly enough, if he was playing for the 49ers now, he'd probably play much better. But playing opposite of Sherman, who was strictly a zone corner for the most part, and forcing Akello to play zone, it's tough. Like he's a man corner. So it just wasn't a good scheme fit. And I think corner, probably more so than any other position, scheme really matters. And I think for a lot of these guys, they get forced into the wrong scheme right out of college and it ruins them immediately. And so for him, I think that was partially it. But at the same time, he's been able to pick himself up by the bootstraps and still make a career out of it. So, yeah, I think Akello, decent pick for sure.
Yep.
What up, Ekim?
Ekim says he can't call into the call-in show, but he will call in next week.
Perfect. I expect you to be first in line.
He usually is, man. He's always first in line. Code Phone, your show. When you used to the call-in shows, he's always first. He's always there. Mo's Nose. Shout out to the chat. We have Mo's Nose in here. We
What
have
up,
Brian
Mose?
Culp in here. We have E. Kim. So shout out to the chat. We got a good amount of people in here. Mo's Nose says, I really liked Akello. He had flashes. He just was in his head too much. Once his confidence was hit, it took a while to get it back.
For sure. For sure.
I mean, not even mentioning Akello, another guy that we're going to discuss later is DJ Reid. I mean, I really wish DJ Reid was still on the 49ers right now. Like, I really do. But moving on to the next pick, another third-round draft pick 104, the man himself, CJ Beathard, quarterback out of Iowa. How would you grade this pick, Jesse?
Like I said, I'll never give a third-round pick an F, but I'm definitely giving this one a D. Like, first of all, Kyle Shanahan, the way that he talked about him, again, it goes back to the way that they talked about him. Traded up to get him, did not have to do that. He would have been there probably 2 rounds later. Loved him so much and made him out to be this guy that he just simply never was. I mean, when it came down to him or Nick Mullins, he preferred Nick Mullins. So that says all you need to know about CJ Beathard. Yeah, CJ Beathard, wasted pick again. You know, third round, I'm not expecting a world beater, but I am expecting a guy that can compete for a starting job. CJ Beathard was never going to be that. CJ Beathard never was that. I'm going to give this one a D.
This is tough because CJ Beathard was starting for the 49ers for a couple of weeks. Wasn't phenomenal, but in some games he was just bad. But in some games he was okay. He wasn't bad. I mean, one game that I was really upset over, the game that CJ Beathard played, we're in Lambeau Field. It's Thursday Night Football. CJ Beathard goes up against Aaron Rodgers, and we're in the lead. We're competing against Aaron Rodgers. We're actually in the game, and then I think we're beating them by almost a touchdown, if not more. And then we ended up losing that game, and I was devastated. I was like, dang it. But CJ Beathard, if I had to grade this pick, I would give it a solid D, because CJ Beathard obviously is still in the league. He wasn't great, but like you said, the way that Shanahan talked about him, as if he was the guy, and he just wasn't the guy. He wasn't the guy at all. So, and Nick Mullins started over him when CJ Beathard started struggling. When Jimmy G got injured, CJ Beathard started struggling really bad, and then Nick Mullins started over CJ Beathard, and Nick Mullins was undrafted. So, I would give this pick a D. But he is obviously still in the league now. He's with the Jaguars, so I wouldn't say he's garbage, but the way that Shanahan talked about him, and then what actually happened, which was Nick Mullins starting over him because Beathard was struggling badly. I mean, I would just pick a D. Like you said, it wasn't great.
Didn't he get injured during the mini camps and it looked pretty serious? I don't know how hurt
he got
he
carted
actually
off. I think he got carted off with the Jaguars.
Yeah, not expecting to need surgery, not overly serious. Okay, he got lucky. But yeah, I mean, you said he's not the guy. He's not even the guy's backup. Like, that's where CJ Beathard is. So yeah, I got to give this one a D.
So moving on to the next pick in round 4, pick 121. Man, every pick where I suggest he's just like, no, just no. Pick 121. We got Joe Williams, running back. How would you grade this pick, Jesse?
God, dude, I gotta follow my own rules. I can't give it an F. This is a strong D-, let me tell you. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Joe Williams is a guy that Shanahan had to have. In fact, he was losing sleep over thinking that Joe Williams might not be on the 49ers. That's how bad he had to have one Joe Williams on his team. Joe Williams never played a single game for the 49ers. Joe Williams was a waste of a freaking pick. And Joe Williams is why today we still have nightmares when the 49ers go back-to-back years, round 3, not round 4, but round 3, taking running backs in Sermon
Sermon
and Ty Davis
and Ty
Price.
Davis Price. Yep.
Like, what
Yep.
are we freaking doing? Listen, I can't give it an F because it's this late in the draft, but I'm gonna give it a solid, firm D-.
I mean, see, this one's tough because he didn't play a snap for the 49ers. I don't think he played a snap. He didn't play a game for the 49ers. No. Right? So it's one of those things where, like, with Reuben Foster, you graded it an F, but Reuben Foster still played and was solid when he did. Joe Williams didn't, and he's out of the league. He retired. So, I mean, if I'm being generous, I would give it a D-. But if I'm being really honest, it's gotta be an F. It just gotta be like, if you don't play at all and then you retire, like, yeah, it's kind of gotta be an F. And if I'm being a little generous, sure, a D-. But man, that's tough.
It's a fourth round pick. That's where I'm trying to come from it. You know, I think as a 4th round pick, a lot of these guys don't pan out. So it's this one's hard because I really wanted to go against the rule that I made up very early on before forgetting that Joe Williams was a 4th round pick. But Joe Williams is still 28. It's never too late for Joe Williams. He can still make it happen. Yeah, this was a really bad pick. I mean, if there was ever going to be an F this late in the draft, it would be right here for sure.
Yep. And shout out Barry a Baller 18. We had trivia over on his channel last week. And turns out, you know, I'm not that bad at trivia. And I actually won the trivia. So
really
great. Yes, I actually did. We had some historical questions in there. So if you want to do some 49ers trivia, go check out Barry a Baller 18's channel. Go show him some love right here. The name's right here. Barry a Baller 18. Go subscribe to his channel. And then go subscribe to Mo's Noses channel as well. Mo's Nose, not Mo's Noses, but Mo's Nose. He also is a YouTuber and 49ers content creator. He's had you on his channel, Jessie, multiple times. And he does shows with Wayne Breezy. He's on Nitty Gritty Niners Talk all the time with Wayne Breezy. So go check out his channel, Mo's Nose. Go get him to 1,000 subscribers. We got another guy in here, Swan Song.
What's up, Swan?
Yep. Swan's the best, man. Swan and me last off. We used to go back in Grant's Discord almost a year ago, and we used to have this hypothetical: if George Kittle got injured the next season, would you trade him for? I think it was like 2 first-round draft picks, and then George Kittle got hurt the next season. But shout out to Swan, man. Moving on to the next draft pick, we got the man, the myth himself, and the guy that I just mentioned his name in George Kittle. I think we can make this very simple in a grade wise. This is an A+. Not really hard to grade. I mean, he's a 5th round draft pick, and he's arguably the best tight end in football. So an A+.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no question about it. I mean, A+. If this was a 1st round pick, I'd still give it an A+. That's what the way that I think of George Kittle. So yes, George Kittle, A+, no doubt about it. Cornerstone of the team. Love his attitude. Love the way that he plays football. People sleep on him. If you're not a 49er fan, people sleep on him. Seen a lot of Mark Andrews is better, Waller's better, Kelsey's better, what have you. Man, Kittle is a football player. He's a hell of a blocker. Hell of a catch, hell of a receiver, just a hell of a person, hell of a football player. Nothing bad to say about George Kittle.
Yep.
I mean, great player, great pick, A++, no question about it.
Yep, this is an easy one. And like, I've always wondered, like, the Niners hit on their late round draft picks, but when it comes to like the 1st round, it's like, how can you hit on George Kittle's and Fred Warner's? And we're going to mention DJ Jones, who's also another 6th round draft pick. Like, how can you hit on these guys, which is really hard to do, But then with like the first or second round, it's like, okay, Mike Mcglinchey, who's not bad, but is he 9th overall pick good?
Right.
Not necessarily. Or like we mentioned, Solomon Thomas or Reuben Foster, like you miss on those guys, but then you can go out and get a stud like George Kittle or go out and get a stud like Fred Warner. It's like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And they've made a low-key little history out of doing this, right? Like just hitting late in drafts. So thank goodness they were able to hit late on a couple picks in this draft. Otherwise, yeah, this would have been a completely failed draft.
Man,
Yeah,
okay.
this
Slonk's comment: Barry Baller should be arrested for child abuse for man beating he gave to Amin in Madden 2021. Dude, Baller is good at Madden, okay?
He's
Now,
really good, yeah.
Baller's really good at Madden, right? And like whenever we play Madden with each other, he'll have like a one-play touchdown deep pass to like Debo, and I'm like, where's my safety? Or why isn't my quarterback on him? Why is the linebacker guarding Debo Samuel? Right? And then I'll get a drive going, and it'll be a long, long drive with running, pounding the ball. It'll be like a Kyle Shanahan run offense, just running the ball, pounding the ball down his throat. And then we'll get to the yard line, and then I'll get like some unfortunate fumble by DeAndre Hopkins or Travis Kelce. And I'm like, great. Then he'll go out and score like another 90-yard touchdown, just float it up in the air, touchdown. And I'm like, great. And I'll get blown out every single time. It'll be like a 50 to like 14 game. No,
These are conversations that I think everybody had when it came to Madden, especially Madden 20. I don't know, man. The defense, the blown coverages. I had to stop playing Madden. I had to retire the sticks. All my spare time goes into YouTube now, but man, Madden is very fun, but very, very frustrating.
I wish I could say the same, Baller. I really wish I could say the same. Like we have fun I have fun with the talking and just playing. But I mean the game itself, how it goes. I wish I could say it was fun as well. For me at least. Brian Club said, Kim, at least you got on. I tried to get on. I pushed off until next time. I don't always call in, but definitely enjoy the change of callers. Jessie, when I'm feeling better, I will call in.
Hey, bet. Good.
Yeah, you and Grant got the long lines. You and Grant really do got the long lines, especially when I used to call into the cone phone. You got like almost 10 people, and then you try to go in, and they'll be like, okay, then whenever someone jumped out, you try to like quickly jump on, and then someone would beat you on.
Yeah, he's got his got crazy. I remember when I used to call in, it got definitely wild over there.
Yep. Moving on to the next pick, still in the league, Trent Taylor, a third down catching machine. Trent Taylor, round 5, pick 177. How would you grade this pick, Jessie?
I'll give it a C. I'll give it a solid C, maybe even a C plus, because I mean we're into the 5th round now, right? And Trent Taylor had some decent games, decent, little seasons, I guess, for what he is. He definitely contributed over in Cincinnati a little bit this last year, but yeah, I mean, this late into things, he had the unfortunate injury, which took away some of his explosion, and just never really got right again with the 49ers, but not a bad player, I don't think. He is a butt of a lot of jokes for sure, but 5th round pick this late, this is a C for me. Trent Taylor's not a bad player at all.
Yep. I mean, I remember, obviously, I always bring up flashbacks, but I remember Jimmy Garoppolo, 2017, Jacksonville. And this is when Jimmy Garoppolo would do things that I was like, wow. Because I was used to Brian Hoyer the whole season. So I was like, the expectations were very low. And then Jimmy Garoppolo would come out and throw a sidearm pass on the run, running to his left, rolling to his left, and sidearm passing it to Trent Taylor. And I'm like, wow, Jimmy is so good. But I mean, Trent Taylor, I would give this pick a C. He was solid, right? And obviously going to 5th round, you're not gonna find that many 5th round guys that contribute as much as Trent Taylor did. And I think Trent Taylor was solid. He's still in the league with the Bengals right now. He's a solid player. He always came in clutch in 3rd down situations in 2017. Whenever the Niners needed a first down and Trent Taylor was on the field, Trent Taylor, majority of the time, or like at least let's say 60% of the time, would make and convert that first down. So Trent Taylor, solid player, 5th round. I would give it either a C or a C plus. It's not a bad pick.
Yeah, not a bad pick at all.
Barry Baller gives it
There
a
we go.
C. Runa says Jalen Hurd is the best pick of the Shanahan and Lynch era. You cannot outdo that. Legendary. Yep. I mean, Terry McLaurin, who? Terry McLaurin over Jalen Hurd? I would never. Moving on to the next pick, round 6, pick 198. We have DJ Jones, who just got himself a bag this offseason with, I think, the Denver Broncos, if I'm not mistaken. Just got himself the bag. DJ Jones, how would you grade this pick?
This is solid A. 6th round to get a player that contributes the way that DJ Jones did for the 49ers. I mean, a great rotational piece for Chris Kosuric. Beast, clogging up the middle. DJ Jones is a good football player. Now, he wasn't worth keeping for the 49ers at that price. Happy he got paid. I expect that he'll continue to contribute in Denver. He's a good football player, for sure. A.
Yep. I would give it an A as well because DJ Jones is contributing for the 49ers, and he was our run stopper. When Javon Kinlaw got hurt, he was our run stopper, and he was on the team just until, obviously, last year because he signed he got himself his contract in free agency. For a 6th round pick to be on your team that long, and he lasted longer for the 49ers than Solomon Thomas was. Right? Solomon Thomas was your 1st round draft pick. So this is easily an A for your 6th rounder to have the impact that he had and to obviously be your starting defensive tackle when obviously Javon Kinlaw was hurt. It's easily an A, like no questions asked, especially for a 6th round draft pick this late. Easily an A.
Yeah, absolutely. No, DJ Jones, A pick for sure, especially that late. Yeah, no question.
Yep. Moving on to the next pick. Now, I really didn't remember this guy that much, but PETA, I'm not going to try to say his last name because I know I'm not going to be able to say it, but round 6, pick 202, we have PETA. How would you grade this pick?
Again, it's hard because you're not expecting any of these guys to contribute here, right? You're literally taking flyers, and that's exactly what this was. They hit on one flyer, they didn't hit on the other. I mean, you have to give it a D just because he never contributed, but really you didn't miss out on anything. I almost want to when it's this late, I almost just want to just remain in the middle and say C, because what did you expect? Right? Like, no, he wasn't a good football player. No, he didn't do anything for the 49ers, but you can't expect him to. Basically, he's a camp body. Maybe he makes team, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he contributes, maybe he doesn't. Most likely he doesn't. So I'll give it a D, but that's because he just did nothing. But I almost just, like I said, I almost just want to give it a rule and say C. Like, if you're this late and you didn't contribute, who cares? You weren't supposed to.
Yep. I can't give it an F because it's this late. Like you said, you don't really expect your 6th rounders to be contributing to your team. So I would give this a D. I can't necessarily give it an F because obviously you don't expect your late 6th rounders or your end of your draft, your last couple of draft picks to, produce and to, help out your team. So I would give it a D. I mean, can't really say much because I don't really remember him. But yeah, I would give it a D. Nothing much.
You realize he's still in the league, or was last year, playing for the same Denver Broncos?
Oh, so Jessie.
I just looked it up. Yeah.
And
he started 0 games in his career. He's played 11, and he's had 5 tackles. So there you go.
At least he has some stats, I guess.
A practice squad guy, right?
Yep. And then the last pick of the 2017 draft, the last pick of the first Shanahan and Lynch draft, Adrian Colbert. And Niners fans, majority of us, I think, still remember Adrian Colbert. He's on Twitter. Yeah. I mean, he is a free agent right now, but He was solid for the 49ers. So how would you grade this draft pick?
I give it a C plus. I mean, the guy played probably 35, 45 games in his career, right? Started a fair amount of those, probably 20 plus. Like, yeah, this has got to be a C plus for me. And I like Adrian Colbert. Like, again, he engages with you on Twitter. He's
Yeah.
still around. Yeah, Adrian Colbert, that's a C plus for sure. This late, I mean, that's you can't really ask for any more than that.
Yeah, I agree. C plus. He was solid. He contributed. He was still in the league after he was done with the 49ers. Solid C plus because there's really not any necessarily seventh rounders that get to play in games as much as at least Adrian Colbert was able to. And then Adrian Colbert was still bounced around the league after he was with the 49ers. So I would say C plus. He showed some flashes his first season. He showed some flashes, and then the next year kind of went a little bit downhill for him. And then obviously he wasn't on the team anymore. But for a seventh round guy, I would give it a C plus.
And he's worn 6 different numbers in his career. That's impressive.
Moving on to the second draft in the Shanahan Lynch era, the 2018 NFL draft, with the first overall pick. Not the first overall pick, with the first round pick, 9th overall pick in the 2018 draft, the San Francisco 49ers selected Mike Mcglinchey, tackle out of Notre Dame. How would you grade this draft pick, Jesse? I think this one's a little bit of a tougher one to grade.
No, this one is tough, and I'm going between 2 grades. I'm going between a C plus or a B minus.
Yep.
Man, I really wish I knew how he was going to play this year because that would factor into it heavy. I'll go B minus for now. So, solid player, probably top 20 at his position in the league, I would think is a fair guesstimate. Top 20 or so. Sure, you were drafted 9th overall. You would hope that he'd be top 3, top 4 at his position, being drafted that high. And so you have to drop him for that. But Mike Mcglinchey is a productive player in this league. He's a starter still 5 years into his career for this very team. So for me, just because of that, I have to go in the B range. So I'm going to go B minus. Man, if he has a really good year this year, I mean, that really could bump up to B plus area. So yeah, we'll go B minus for now, but I'm rooting for Mike Mcglinchey.
Yep. I would agree with you. I would say probably C plus B minus range because he is really good at run blocking, but then obviously a lot of Niner fans' criticism is he's not that great in pass protection, right? And honestly, who knows how well he's going to be this season? And that is a question mark on the 49ers offensive line. I think this upcoming season is, will Mcglinchey be able to play, number one? And then if he does play, will he be able to perform, right? Or how well will he perform if he does play? Because Mcglinchey was already not the greatest pass blocker. He was good at run blocking. But after that injury, how strong will he come back? And that's the biggest question mark. So if I had to grade this pick, now obviously he isn't a top offensive lineman in the league, and his teammate Quentin Nelson is, who got selected, I think, 3 picks before. I mean, that's tough. I mean, it's tough. I mean, I wish we had Quentin Nelson on this team, but obviously we don't. But overall, I'd give it a C plus B minus range. He's still a starter, and he would be a starter for most teams in the league if he wasn't on the 49ers. He's a solid player. He's good at run blocking, but obviously he isn't a top offensive lineman in the league, but he is solid. So I would give this a C plus B minus range.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving on to the next pick, we have fan favorite, or not necessarily fan favorite, but East Bay Chris's favorite. Round 2, pick 44, Dante Pettis.
Let's go D minus on this one. I'm not going to go F because Pettis showed flashes, right? And he wasn't a first round pick. So much like you weren't willing to give Foster an F, because he played and showed flashes. I'm going to follow suit here because this is a second round pick now, not a first round pick, and give this a D minus. I mean, he had 5 total touchdowns his first year, showed some flashes. That catch, I believe, against Minnesota had everybody excited. The back of the end zone. It just he just wasn't a football player. I don't know if he loves playing football, right? And he isn't the biggest fan of getting hit, which is fine, but when you're drafted in round 2, we expected so much more. Had all those college records. When it came to the return game, we at least hoped he would be that. He was not that. Just didn't work out for him, right? Still trying to bounce around the league a little bit, but ultimately he's probably going to be out of it here if he's not out of it already. And it's unfortunate, but I'll go D minus.
I would go D. He wasn't bad his first year. He was okay, I guess, but he just wasn't what we expected from him, right? And I remember watching this draft, and we expected him, the Niners fans, at least us Niners fans, expected him to be something in the return game, and then he wasn't that either, right? He wasn't a great receiver, and then he also didn't show much in the receiving game, and the kick return game, and the special teams. So I would give it a D. It's a second round pick. It's obviously not a first round pick, but you can get some value in a second rounder, and he just wasn't it. So I would give it a D.
This is an A plus comment by Barry Baller for sure.
Man, Dante Pettis like that's the funny thing though. DK Metcalf changes his hair colors. And then Dante Pettis also used to do that. Dante Pettis used to do that where he had the pig. Then I remember he had the light blue at one point. But it's kind of funny when you look at DK changing his hair colors and you look at Dante Pettis changing his hair colors throughout the season.
I can't get with a grown man dyeing his hair. I'm sorry. It's a little weird to me.
Moving on to the next pick. Let's just make this. I think this is pretty easy. But we have Fred Warner. Round 3, pick 70. Fred Warner. I think this is a pretty easy grade, A plus. Not really much to say here. We all know it's pretty self-explanatory why Fred Warner is an A plus pick. One of the best linebackers, if not the best linebacker in football. So easily for a third round pick, you get the best linebacker in football. A plus.
Let's I think also we should probably note that round 2 they technically selected Jimmy Garoppolo as well, right? Because they traded that pick. So I mean, this is an A plus. There's nothing to talk about, but let's go back to round 2. Jimmy Garoppolo, round 2, essentially. What would you grade that pick?
That's tough. I'll give it an A. Now, the reason why I give the Jimmy Garoppolo pick an A is because you traded a second round pick. You got Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, I have a side question for you after I make my point. But Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously, he was the quarterback for when you made it to the NFC Championship game, when you made it to the Super Bowl. And he kind of made the Niners relevant again because the Niners would, the first 2 years before Shanahan and Lynch, like I said, we were horrible. Our quarterbacks were Blaine Gabbert, and then everybody was shot for Kaepernick to come in the game. And then when Kaepernick would do bad, then everybody wanted Blaine Gabbert in the game. So the Niners just weren't relevant before Shanahan and Lynch were there. And then obviously when Jimmy Garoppolo was there. Before, just look at the resume so far of what you got for that second round pick. You traded a second round pick and you made it to 2 NFC Championship games. You made it to a Super Bowl appearance. You had 2 winning seasons when Jimmy Garoppolo was healthy. Now, I think what people look at the most is the contract. Now, that's the question that I'm going to ask you after is, do you think the Niners made the right move at that time period when the Niners did offer him after those 5 games, that $100 million contract? Because I remember watching ESPN after that contract and watching just the national media in general. And everybody was like, it was just 5 games. It was only 5 games. But for what you were able to do with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, only for a second round pick, which who knows what the second round pick of the Niners kept then. Didn't trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. what that second round pick would have turned into. But I don't think you could really beat the value of what you got, which was 2 NFC Championship games, 1 Super Bowl appearance, had a 13-3 record in 2019, and then obviously won last year also and made to the NFC Championship game. So I would give it an A or an A
I'm gonna
minus.
give it a B, and the only reason I'm gonna give it a B is because yes, it was Jimmy for a second. That on the surface, I think is probably an A, but you didn't get to pay him like a second round pick, right? New England did that well before, so you did have to pay him like a superstar quarterback. And so that money offsets things. If you had Jimmy G at rookie wages for 3 years or 4 years, hell yeah, that's an A plus plus, right? Like Jimmy's a starting level quarterback. You get that in round 2 and you don't have to pay him squat. That's an easy no-brainer A plus. But because it wasn't quite that, it wasn't quite an apples to apples comparison, I have to give it B probably. And I don't know. I go back and forth on this. The contract actually, here's where the 49ers made the mistake. It actually wasn't signing Jimmy to the contract. It was not taking the outs that they had for now going on year 3. That's where the issue was. A lot of people want to kill Parag for a contract like this, but he gave Shanahan and Lynch outs after 2019 for 2020 and again this upcoming year. So yeah, this is. I actually don't have that big of a problem with the contract at all. I mean, he did what he had to do, Parag being and structuring that thing properly. The 49ers just didn't take advantage of it.
Yep. Was it justifiable for the 49ers to sign Jimmy Garoppolo after 5 games? Now, I don't think, like you said, I don't think the problem was necessarily signing Jimmy G. Because after those 5 games, Jimmy G looked like the guy. He looked like the guy for the 49ers, right? Because, like, the sidearm throws, what he did, won 5 games, and everybody's like, oh, it's the Jaguars and the Titans. The Jaguars were Saxonville that year, had one of the best defenses in the league that year, made it to the AFC Championship game, and then the Titans, who were trying to get a wild card spot there, right? Niners, really nobody expected much from the Niners, but he went out and beat those 2 teams, right? So I don't think necessarily the problem was giving him that contract. Now, you could say, sure, it was too early, but I want to bring up David's comment. He said, I mean, the dream was good. I'm doing well. Thank you for tuning in, David. Jimmy G looked good in those 5 games after he tore his ACL. He was never the same, right? I agree with that. Completely agree, because you look at 2018 Chiefs game, he tears his ACL while running. What do a lot of Niners fans look at after those couple of years when he came back from that injury? Jimmy wouldn't run when he was under pressure. What would Jimmy do? He would stand in the pocket, he would get frozen, and then he would take the sack. Right? That's what Jimmy would do. Jimmy Garoppolo, instead of kind of playing the way that he did in 2017, which I would say is fearless football, because Jimmy wasn't scared if he got hit, or Jimmy would roll out of the pocket. Jimmy Garoppolo, after he came back from that injury, played scared football. He wasn't the same. He was worried about, oh, am I going to tear my ACL, or I don't want to get hurt again. So he was worried about those things, in my opinion. He played scared football. He didn't play freely. He played scared after that, right? And he was worried about those things after that. And like I said, standing in the pocket, staying still, being frozen like a statue, and taking the sack. Over and over and over and over again. 2019 did it. Even though the Niners made the Super Bowl, 2019 he did it. 2020, obviously, he was injured, but he did it on few occasions. And even last year, he did it. Right? It was the pattern after.
I'm gonna push back just a little bit because I actually do tend to agree with this. I think in 19 that was certainly the case, right? The brace was a big deal. 2020, same thing. I think this last year we saw the same Jimmy. I think we saw a Jimmy that was kind of playing carefree football, right? A guy that knew he was not going to be a 49er starting quarterback going forward, really had nothing to prove. He was playing carefree football, was getting paid a lot of money. Jimmy, remember the whole Jimmy Wheels comment came out this year, right? Like he was a mobile quarterback again. The problem is, as a passer, Jimmy never changed. So, yes, he played with a little bit more fear, I would say, right? In 19 and 20 for sure. But he just never progressed as a passer. And to me, it's funny because you hear the comments from his teammates like, "Oh, we don't even talk to Jimmy in the offseason. You know, you can't even get a hold of Jimmy." Shanahan said the same thing this offseason. That makes me wonder how much he really spends perfecting his craft. How much he
That
really wants to be a great quarterback.
that's a great point that you just brought up, because that's the thing, right? And when you look at some of the busts, I'm not saying all the busts in the NFL and NFL history, you could say, but obviously you could have a great player. But if that player doesn't have the work ethic or the drive necessarily to be great and perfect his craft, then when you look at some of those busts, that's the reason, because they didn't necessarily have that drive to be great. Now, I'm going to bring it up, and I think this is an obvious one, which is Jamarcus Russell. Now, yes, you could say Jamarcus Russell was in a bad situation, and Jamarcus Russell wasn't with the greatest team, and all the situation, all the things that you could say about Jamarcus Russell. But Jamarcus Russell didn't have that drive to get better or wanting to be great, right? And there was pre-draft when interviewers or like reporters would ask him, "What do you think you need to work on your game?" He would just kind of look puzzled. He'd be like, "What? Like, I think I'm fine, right?" And then there was a story that I think there was a report that came out that the Raiders would have to buy him Big Macs for them to get him to watch tape. I think for him to get him to watch tape. And then I think what was the last straw for Jamarcus Russell was that the Raiders sent him a blank tape. And they said, "Here's the film, watch it tonight, and then tell us your thoughts after." And then there was nothing on the tape, and Jamarcus Russell said, and they asked him, "Did you watch the tape?" And he said, "Yeah, everything was fine. Everything was great on the tape." But they sent him a blank tape, and then obviously he gets cut. But and obviously Jamarcus Russell's an obvious like choice of okay, bust, but you have to have a quarterback that necessarily wants to not necessarily that wants to be great, but that has a drive and that wants to perfect his craft and that wants to be great in this league. Right, and that's with any position, because if you don't have a guy that necessarily wants to be great and that's just being okay with being an okay or solid player and just okay with getting money, that's fine. But if you want the difference between like necessarily like the good players and the great players, it's the work ethic, right? And even Jerry Rice, for example. Jerry Rice wasn't the fastest guy. He didn't have the best hands necessarily. He wasn't the tallest or the most physical. But what made Jerry Rice so great is because Jerry Rice was dedicated and he had a phenomenal work ethic. Right? So that's what necessarily I'm not saying that's why Jerry Rice is so great, but that's what kind of necessarily helped Jerry Rice become great is because he wasn't the fastest. But there goes back to the saying where hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So Jerry Rice wasn't the most talented, but he always put in the work, and that's why he's the greatest receiver of all time.
This is also why we are very excited about Trey Lance because he
Yep.
shows signs of being the antithesis of what we just talked about. He does show that he is a guy that wants to be great. Every time he's interviewed, every time somebody talks about him, it's the mental side of the game. It's how he wants to be great, how he'll stop at nothing to make sure that he gets to that point in his career. And so, yeah, there's a reason to be excited about Trey Lance. And this is, kind of where we're at with it. So, yeah, but that was it with Jimmy. He just never really progressed. He just stayed the same. And when you stay the same, you're getting worse. Right. And
Yep.
so that's the way it was with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yep. And then, like you said, Trey Lance, right? Second off season, I would say second off season, working out with Ayuk, Ray McLeod, the new additions on the team, putting in the work. You see him videos every couple of weeks with him working with Quincy Avery and Coach McAvoy, right? You would see him putting in the work and trying to get better. You would see it constantly, right? And then reaching out to Ayuk and saying, "Do you want to work on? Do you want to catch them passes?" Ray McLeod and Craycraft, right? River Craycraft, right? So that's what you want to see out of your quarterback, who's taking leadership and taking the leadership role and saying, "Do you want to work out with me? We both want to get better? Do you want to go and, catch passes or try to improve this offseason?" That's what you want from your quarterback, right? That's what you want from your quarterback. And like you said, Jimmy's not available in the offseason. And I haven't seen a Jimmy Garoppolo video come out ever necessarily in the offseason, even when Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't injured of him working out or throwing balls to teammates. I just
Yeah, and
necessarily
that's
haven't seen it.
that's just it. Like we're in that era now where social media is such a big thing. I don't necessarily need to see that happen. Now there were stories that he was doing that. I think it was lead up to the 2018 season where he was working
2018
out with
season,
teammates, something
2018
like that.
season, I guess, because I
Yeah,
mean,
but at the same time, when I don't see the progression at all,
yeah,
it almost feels like you regress. I mean, again, let's go back to 2018 before he got hurt. He looked pretty bad for 3 games, 2.5 games before he was injured.
mm-hmm,
He had the one or he had basically a drive against Minnesota that was like, okay, there's the Jimmy. That's the one, right? Where he hit Dante Pettis in the back corner of
yep.
the end zone that we were
That
talking
was
about.
that was one of the probably
Great
the
throw.
best passes that Jimmy threw in his
Great
49ers
throw.
career. Yeah.
Great throw. So he had that, right? It's the glimpse of hope there. He looked terrible against the Lions. Really should have lost that game, right? Throwing a pick. I think it would have been a pick six, but there was a holding on the opposite side of the field that basically bailed them out so they could win that
Yeah.
game. Then it wasn't looking good again against Kansas City, and he got injured. And so then the story kind of gets rewritten. Well, he just wasn't the same after that. And then they went to the Super Bowl and it didn't start out great in 2019 at all. It looked atrocious. Remember week 1 of 2020?
Mm-hmm.
So now, like 2020, everybody's thinking, okay, so Jimmy had his ups and downs in 2019, right? He showed us glimpses in 2017. 2018, everybody kind of forgot about. And then 2019, he was injured, but they still went to the Super Bowl. This is his year to really make that leap, right? He's been in the system for a few years. Mentally, he should be sharp. Physically, he's looking better. He's more than a year removed from this injury, almost 2 full years. And he comes out against the Cardinals and played one of the worst games that he had played. Then he had the game against Miami and Seattle that it was terrible in 2020. I don't know, man. He just never got better. Never got better.
Yep. Yeah. Moving on to the next pick, round 4, pick 128, Cantavia Street.
I mean, this is I don't know. I'll go C plus probably. I think C plus is fair. I mean, he was still playing for the 49ers last year. He was basically a redshirt in 2018. Started a couple games last year. Was rostered for all 17 games. Not the biggest impact, but he did make some impact. Good rotational lineman. Yeah, I mean, Cantavia Street is fine pick in round 4. No issue with Cantavia Street. So I'll go C plus. Go C plus.
Yep, he was solid. He made a couple of plays. He was solid. So I would give it, I wouldn't say C plus, but I would probably give it a C or C minus. He was solid. Now this one hurts a little bit. I would say this one hurts a little bit, not too much. But this pick hurts because he got his bag in New York. But I mean, last season the Niners really could have used DJ. They really could have used him. So how would you grade the pick of DJ Reid?
This is a B. I mean, he was a contributor for the 49ers, 5th round, went to Seattle, started there. He's going to start again with New York, right? So this is a guy who's a consistent starter in the league, round 5. Certainly played a role 2019 for the 49ers. So yeah, this is a solid B for me. DJ Reid's a good football player.
I would say B plus or A minus because he's a 5th round draft pick, right? And then going back to the 5th round, right? You got George Kittle, and now there's DJ Reid, who I wish was obviously still on the 49ers, but now he's on with New York. But DJ Reid overall is a pick for you to get him in the 5th round. He contributed in that 2019 season. He went on to Seattle, played there, was a contributor there, was a starter there, and then goes to the Jets, gets his bag, and then he's going to be a starter for the Jets this upcoming season. So for a 5th round pick to sign a big contract, not a big contract, but to sign a contract free agency, be a starter for numerous teams when he's not on your team anymore, that's a B. And he contributed for the 49ers in 2019. So I would say B plus, A minus range. I would say B plus or A minus. Because he's a good player. Now, is he a great corner? No. Is he on the level of Jalen Ramsey or Alexander or Howard or Tre'Davious White? No. But for a 5th-round draft pick to be able to contribute on other teams, to be able to start on other teams, it's a B. He's a B plus or an A minus. He's a good player.
He's a starter in this league, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. In round 5, that's
Yeah.
can't hate that.
Yep. Moving on to the next pick, we only got 2 more picks after this in the 2018 draft. Round 6, pick 184, we have Marcel Harris, who got some action last season next to Fred Warner and Aziz, who got some action last year. So how would you grade this pick?
I'd have to go B again. I mean, we're in the 6th round, right? It's not Reid level good, but it's good. I mean, he's played multiple positions with the 49ers. He's contributed in multiple games. He's been relatively healthy the last couple of years, suited for the 49ers. Started 7 or so games last year. I mean, Marcel Harris is a decent football player, especially in round 6. I mean, he's contributed for sure. So I have to go B here.
I would go, since I said DJ Reid B plus A minus, I would give Marcel Harris a C plus because he is a contributor for a 6th-round pick. He's had some okay to good starts for the 49ers because of injuries, but he's a solid player for a 6th-round draft pick to make your team, to play in a couple of games. He's a solid player, so I would give it a C plus. Now, like you said, he isn't on that DJ Reid level, but he isn't bad. He isn't bad for a 6th-round draft pick. That's not bad at all. So I would give it a C plus. Moving on to the next pick, I think this is a pretty, I would say in my opinion, this is a pretty easy choice. Round 7, pick 223, we have Julian Taylor.
I'm going to go probably higher than what you think. I'm going to go C minus on this one. 7th round pick. I mean, what again, what do you expect from a 7th round pick? Literally nothing. Like, this is a flyer of flyers. He had the physical frame that the 49ers were looking for. He did play some games for the 49ers. He was a part of the rotation. He wasn't ran out of the league immediately, right? He wasn't anything great by any means, but I mean, I think a C minus for a guy who contributed and played for multiple years in the league. Yeah, I think that's a fair grade, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go a little bit lower because obviously you don't expect much from your 7th-round picks, but he wasn't necessarily anything special. Now, I can't blame him for that because you really don't expect much from your 7th-round draft picks. So, I mean, I would give it maybe a D plus because he was in the league. He showed he had some plays in preseason. He wasn't bad. So I would give this a D plus. I mean, it's not, you can't really expect much from your 7th-round draft picks, but I wouldn't say he's C level because he wasn't necessarily like that good for a 7th-round draft pick. He was better than most, but I don't think he's C level. So I would give it a D plus, in my opinion.
Yeah, to me, like, if you make an active roster as a 7th-round pick, like, that puts you in the C range automatically. To me, just because I feel like, again, you're not expected to contribute at all. Like, you're not even expected to make a practice squad at that point. So 7th-round pick, if you can make an active roster and get some snaps, I mean, that's
fair. I mean, that's fair. That's fair. But I'm just a little bit lower on Julian Taylor.
Yeah, that's fair. All right.
Moving on. Last pick in the 2018 draft. Last pick in the 2nd year of that Shanahan and Lynch drafted together. We have Richie James. Now, I feel like Richie James is, not to say legacy, but Richie James' reputation kind of gets tarnished because of last season's preseason. Last preseason. Now, last preseason, what a mess that was. Richie James could not catch a ball if his life depended on it. He couldn't catch a pass. It was atrocious. But for a 7th-round pick to make it on your roster And then a lot of people forget. Now, I don't think Richie James is, I don't think Richie James is wow, but Richie James is really darn good for a 7th round draft pick. And if you look at some of the games that he had for the 49ers, when the 49ers had injuries, going back to that Green Bay Packers game, he put up like 140 yards. Now you could say, yes, the team was pretty much injured. Ayuk had COVID. Debo was hurt. He was the only guy, but he still made your roster. He was your last pick in the 7th round. This is easily B plus, if not A minus range. Easily. And obviously last preseason, it was atrocious. He, in my opinion, probably deserved to get cut because his last preseason wasn't that great. But he had some good games for the 49ers. When the 49ers needed him and we were depleted with injuries or someone had COVID, he was the guy to step up and make plays and, put up yards. So Richie James, I would say B plus A minus range.
I'll go. Yeah, I'll probably go B on this one. I'm with you though. I mean, at the end of the day, remember we talked about early in this draft, Pettis round 2 was supposed to be that guy at kick returner. Richie James actually ended up being the better kick returner. Now, he wasn't anything special. He did have I believe, a return touchdown his rookie year, but decent player, was rostered for 3 years, started even not last year, but the year before, like 5-6 games, something like that. Yeah, Richie James is decent player for sure. And a 7th round pick, you can't be mad at it. I'll reserve a B plus for somebody that like is still in the league, at least when we're talking about the draft. But I'll go solid B for sure for Richie James.
Well, moving on to the 3rd draft that Shanahan and Lynch did together. And I would say arguably probably one of their best drafts. It's up there. 2019 NFL draft. We have with the 1st round, 2nd overall pick, Nick Bosa. And I still remember that. I'm kind of saying it like how ESPN said it when Nick Bosa planted the flag on Baker Mayfield. Nick Bosa. But I think this is pretty obvious for both of us. A plus, beast, dominant. Sad that he got hurt last year. Not last year, but 2020. I don't remember, 2020 or 2021. He gets 2020. Hurt. And then comes back and has a 15 sack season. He is insane. That is really hard to do. To come off a torn ACL and then contribute and put up the numbers that he did, insane. Easily an A plus.
Yeah, he's going to go for 18 plus this year, assuming he's healthy. And I think this is perfect. The time has gone a little longer than probably expected, but I think it's fair to only go through this draft anyways and stop. Because for me anyways, I've always said that all players deserve 3 full years in the league before you say what they are or what they aren't, right? You have a feeling, but I've seen a lot of guys break out in year 3. So for me, this year is perfect to end on because they've all had 3 full years. Like we know exactly who these guys are, right? There's no questions about any of them. Even Kinlaw, who was in the next draft, yeah, it hasn't looked the greatest, but that's been because of injury. He could come out this year, put together 15 to 17 healthy games and be a beast. We don't know, So yeah, A plus, no doubt about it. This draft, at least in the early rounds, was so damn good to kick it off.
Now, round 2, pick 36. I think this is going to be a little bit controversial here.
God. If you don't give anything but an A plus, it's going to be controversial. Go ahead. Go. I got to hear this.
See, this is why it's tough because I was with these people before last year, right? And I was like, dang it, the Niners should have drafted DK or AJ Brown or Terry McLaurin, but instead we got stuck with Debo. We got stuck with Debo Samuel, who can't stay on the field, who's shown potential, who has potential, and has shown some flashes, but cannot stay healthy. Now, I'm really high on Debo, and what he did last year blew me away. One of the best in the game, one of the best receivers in the game, and probably the best gadget player in the NFL. Right? But my only knock is that he's only done it for 1 year. Right? And I'm not going to say that Debo isn't a great player. Debo is a great player. Debo is one of the best in the league, right, at his position. And he's the best gadget player, but saying that it's an A plus, I mean, he's just I just gotta see more consistency. That's just my only knock. Now, I think Debo Samuel can do that, but if you look at Debo Samuel's year in the NFL, 2019 had some games where he was hurt, but showed some flashes. 2020, obviously, he got hurt, broke his foot, gained some weight, got hurt. But then last year, obviously, he had his breakout year, but that was just 1 year. And, like, as a Niners fan, I'm a little bit more cautious only because have we not seen where, like, George Kittle, for example, right? And George Kittle's the main and obvious, like, choice because George Kittle also had that one breakout year, and then he just wasn't able to stay on the field the next couple years. He missed some games last year. He missed majority of the season the year before that. So my only knock necessarily on Debo Samuel is I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's a great player. But I just haven't seen it consistently, at least in my opinion. For me, oh dang, we talk about Debo Samuel and Dr. Average Sports Kid jumps right into the chat right away.
His ears
Dang,
were burning.
that was pretty fast, man. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's an A plus, but I would give it an A minus because I think Debo's a great player. But for me to say A plus, DK Metcalf and AJ Brown and those guys. Now, I'm not saying those guys are better than Debo, but they've done it more consistently than Debo Samuel. So I wouldn't say it's an A plus pick until maybe next season if he does it again. I'm not saying do exactly what he did last season, but unless he's able to play, at least majority of his games and put up good stats, I would say an A minus. I wouldn't say A plus just yet.
All right. I'm going to go give a little comparison here. So, Debo Samuel, his rookie year, like right now, everybody's saying Cooper Kupp's a top 5 receiver, right? Based off of what he did last year, which was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal year. But his rookie year, he put up 869 total yards. Debo Samuel's rookie year, he put up 961 total yards. Second year, Cooper Kupp got injured, played only 8 games, put up 500 and we'll call it 590 total. Debo Samuel, similar situation, only played 7 games, but only started 5, put up just over 400 yards. Now, year 3, Cooper Kupp had a bit of a breakout. He had 94 catches, 1,161 yards. Debo Samuel also had a breakout. Even if we take away his 365 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns, he still put up 1,405 yards receiving. So more yards receiving than Cooper Kupp in year 3, who had a bit of a breakout. Now, we saw what Cooper Kupp did last year. Debo's kind of already put together a great year. For me, this is an A-plus pick. Debo Samuel is a top tier weapon in the league. I don't whether it's receiver
I
you
won't
want to list
disagree
him
with
at,
that.
whatever.
I won't disagree with that. Yeah.
He's a weapon. And to get that in round 2, man, this is an A+. You're crazy with an A-. Crazy.
I'm not saying that he's bad, right? And I agree with you. He's one of the best gadget players in the NFL.
Okay,
He's
what
a
if
top
they had
receiver.
taken what if they had taken AJ Brown? What would you have given this pick?
AJ Brown, I would have given it an A, at least an A. I'm not saying that that's a way better grade, but I would give it an A because AJ Brown has been able to do it more consistently, right? And that's the thing, right? And I'm not knocking Debo Samuel. I think he's a phenomenal player, but the reason why I'm not grading this pick as an A plus is because I don't know if he can do it consistently yet. I'm not saying that he has to do it for 4 years in a row or 5 years in a row, but he has to show me at least one more season where he can stay healthy and put up not necessarily the same numbers, but be productive. Then I could say, next offseason I could be like, okay, he deserves an A plus because he was able to do it consistently. I think consistency is important, And I've seen it. Like I said, I'm not gonna go back. I go back to George Kittle. I think George Kittle's the best tight end in football. But George Kittle, after that one breakout year and then he got his contract, George Kittle wasn't able to stay on the field for majority of the season. The year after that, and then last year he missed a couple of games also, and then he was banged up, right? And then George Kittle was never able to reach that 1,000-yard season mark. And I'm not going to take anything away from George Kittle because he is still impactful for the 49ers. But I would say Debo is an A-. And if I were to grade A.J. Brown, I would give it an A because he's done it more consistently.
See, but I would argue that Debo actually has been consistent. Because when you play in 15 games your rookie year and put up 961 total yards, that's a really good rookie season. Like most rookies don't put up those kind of stats. Now you have the rare guys that come in the league and light it up, but for the most part, rookie receivers don't put up those kind of numbers. So then he was having, although he was out of shape and injured or whatever, this is where the inconsistency comes in. But his numbers were still decent. And then last year, he just absolutely exploded. So has he been consistent from being like a top 2-3 weapon in the league? No, but he did have a year like that. And as far as being consistent as a starter in this league and a pretty decent level starter, I think he has been that.
All right, well, this one we disagree on a little bit, but I mean, like I said, DK, AJ Brown, and those guys, they've just been able to do it more consistently. And I'm not saying
but
that
they also haven't had a year like Debo just had, to be fair.
Haven't, right? And that's why I said Debo's the best gadget player, and I think Debo's easily a top 10 and are probably, in my opinion, a top 7, if not a top 5 receiver in this league. Right? So I'm not knocking that. I'm not trying to knock Debo Samuel, but I just have to see one more year of Debo being healthy for majority of the season and being productive. That's just me personally. And yes, you don't see a lot of round 2 guys. You don't see a lot of round 2 guys be the best gadget player in the NFL or do what Debo Samuel has been able to do. But at the same time, when you look at the guys that he's been drafted with, now, yes, you could make the argument that they have better quarterbacks, but still, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, and even Terry McLaurin, who's had garbage quarterbacks for his whole career, has been able to do it more consistently. More consistently. I'm not saying Debo isn't consistent, but more consistently than Debo has. That's just me. That's just me personally.
Okay, let's look at this real quick. So DK's played in 49 games.
DK had 900 his first year, had 1,300 I think his second year, and then had 900 something also last year.
Okay, so you do realize that in 49 games, so Debo's played 11 less games. Debo actually has as many yards as he does.
Dang.
So not receiving, right? So he's behind him around almost 600 yards in receiving, but he's got 550 rushing yards. So they're neck and neck in total yardage since they've come into the league.
Like I said,
telling you, man, Debo's
This is the comment, right? Like I said, I don't think Debo is a bad player. Like I said, I think Debo's top 5 in the league. He's the best gadget player, but I need to see more consistency. That's it. That's all I'm gonna say. I just need to see more consistency. I gotta see.
But hold on a second. AJ Brown hasn't been picture perfect health. He missed two games.
But AJ Brown was what? His first season put up 1,000 yards, and then obviously he missed some games last year. But AJ Brown still put up 1,000, like what? 1,300, I think.
But he has less total yards than Debo. Debo has more yards than him.
I get the yardage thing. Right?
In 5 less games.
I get the yardage thing. But I need Debo to stay healthy for another season. That's it. I need Debo to stay healthy. That's what I'm saying. I need to see more consistency, meaning I need him to stay healthy for another year and be productive. Because like George Kittle, let's say Debo Samuel gets his back, hypothetically, and then Debo Samuel gets injured for majority of the year. Let's say Debo Samuel misses games and he's not the same. I'm not saying he's not going to be productive even if he misses games, but let's say he's not the Debo that he was, or not necessarily because I think the Niners are going to use him less rushing, but let's say he's not close to being productive as he was in 2021, then would you say Debo Samuel would be an A+ pick? Let's say what happened to George Kittle happened to Debo Samuel. And I'm not saying exactly, but let's say that happened. What happened to George Kittle happen to Debo. And Debo would still be productive. He would still be one of the best players on the team, but he wouldn't be as productive as he was in 2021, and he would miss games. He would miss at least 4 games or 5 games per season.
Yeah, I'd still say if he's that productive, I'd say it's an A+. Now, I would say maybe paying him top tier receiver money, maybe that's not an A+ decision. But as far as the pick in round 2, I'd have to go A+. Somebody says he had 12 drops last year. He had 10 drops last year. He has had 22 in his career. That is an issue for him. Certainly needs to be more sure-handed, especially with Trey being there. That is a bit of a concern. They really haven't worked out together with the whole contract thing going on. But man, Debo is, again, to say that he's up there in yardage more than A.J. Brown and right under DK Metcalf in that many games less, when I started looking at that, I didn't think it would be as close as it was. So that's crazy. Like, Debo's a dog.
Debo is a dog. Debo is definitely a dog. And not Sheriff Sports said, but not as disrespectful as my new least favorite game, Madden 23.
That's dirty work.
I mean, I don't think Matt. See, that's the thing, right? Like I said, I think Debo needs to stay healthy for the year, but Madden straight up disrespected Debo. Okay, I'm still giving Debo an A rating, right? I think I'm still giving Debo an A rating, but Madden straight up disrespected Debo by giving him an 89. You give Cooper Kupp a 98, and then you give Debo an 89. Right? I really don't think that's gonna have an impact on playing the game, because it doesn't really matter if he was a 13th best receiver, like gameplay wise. I think Debo's still gonna be great in Madden. But 89, I think that's more disrespectful than giving him an A- draft grade. We got a few more picks until we wrap this up. I know it's getting late over. So I apologize, Jessie, but we have round 3, pick 67, Jalen Hurd. I think this is pretty an obvious choice.
F.
F.
No, it can't be an F. That's my rule, right? D-.
I mean, that's the thing, right? The reason why I give this pick an F, right?
Actually, you know what? I'm giving this an F. I don't care, because they hung on way too long. They hung on way too long.
Yeah. And the reason why I'm giving it an F is because you could have gotten Terry McLaurin. Imagine Terry McLaurin next to Debo. That would have been ridiculous. That would have been a great wide receiver duo. But instead, you have Jalen Hurd. And Jalen Hurd looked better than Debo that first preseason game. He went up and caught that touchdown between 2 defenders against the Cowboys. Jalen Hurd looked amazing.
He was supposed to be Debo. Everything Debo's doing in this running game, this was supposed to be Jalen Hurd.
This was his role in the offense. Yes. This was his role in the offense, but it just never worked out. And like I said, the reason why I'm giving it an F is because you could have had Terry McLaurin. But instead, you drafted Hurd, who didn't work out and missed a bunch of games, and then got cut last year. And then even when he was healthy during the couple of preseason games, didn't show much. Moving on, round 4, pick 110, we have Mitch Wishnowski. This is tough. Like, I mean, I don't really know what to give this.
A D. It's a D. And the reason that it's a D is because, first of all, it's a punter. Way too early to be taking a punter, in my opinion. And he's not even a great punter. He's like a meh punter. He's bottom 10 in the league in punting, probably. So you reached on the position, and then it's not even that great of a player. So this one's, I'll go D on this one.
David McNeese says, can I go as low as Z for Jalen Hurd?
Z-.
I would go D plus maybe. And if I'm being generous, C-. I mean, you don't really need to take a punter in the 4th round. And like you said, Mitch Wishnowski isn't great where I'm like, oh, dang. Wow, Mitch Wishnowski was a great pick in the 4th round.
Right.
And like one guy, the Buffalo Bills got Matt Ariza in, I think, the 5th round or 6th round. And like you could see it in college that guy has a leg, right? That guy has a leg. Now, I'm not going to say that's going to translate into the NFL, but like you understand why they took him, where the Bills took him. Where Mitch Wishnowski, you're like, what? A punter? Mitch Wishnowski? Why? It's too high to draft a punter, and you could probably get, let's say, an undrafted guy that could probably do the same thing that Mitch Wishnowski is doing for the 49ers right now. which really isn't that much.
Well,
So
let's also look at the Bills situation, right? The Bills all first of all, they took later. They didn't take him as early. You can see some of the traits, but also that team is
stacked, like
yeah, like
stacked,
where's the weakness, right? Like they don't really
and they
have
got
any
a running back.
weaknesses.
They got a running back this
They do.
draft with James
Yes.
Cook, Josh
Yes.
Allen, Cook. You have the weapons. That defense is stacked. Like you have
They
no
have
weakness.
everything. Right.
You
So
have
you can
zero
take
weaknesses.
one. The 49ers now they did go to the Super Bowl after this, but no, they didn't think that they were a Super Bowl team, right? They didn't think
Yeah.
that they had zero holes on their roster. They could have used another player here.
Yep. Moving on to the last 4 picks of the day, because I know it's getting late for Jessie, and we've already passed the hour and 35 mark, so this is probably one of my longest streams ever. But round 5, pick 148, Dre Greenlaw. Now, I'm a little bit higher on Dre Greenlaw than most, but how would you grade this pick, Jessie?
Oh, this is a B plus. It's a B plus. Maybe even an A minus. I mean, first of all, still on the team, still starting, still contributing. Round 5 had the magical moment in Seattle, right? That we'll never forget. You know, I'm gonna give it an A minus for that. I mean, he's put a memory in our memory banks that we'll never forget, right?
Yeah.
And he'll always be a part of that. Round 5, and it's not like he just had a moment, right? Where it was like Malcolm Smith for Seattle had like a Super Bowl, and then he was garbage after that, and we signed him and overpaid him or whatever. No, it was Dre Greenlaw is still a good football player. Like if we traded him today, he's probably worth a 3rd round pick.
Yep.
So his value is way higher than what you drafted him at. He's still starting 4 years later for this team. Yeah, Dre Greenlaw is. I'm gonna go A minus on this one.
I'm
This is
going A minus, like you said, because of that Seattle game. That was one of the most crazy games I've ever watched. Right? And like, Seattle's probably gonna win this game, and then obviously Dre Greenlaw makes that play, which I was like, yes, right? And it's kind of funny. I mean, Seattle with those 1 yard lines, like, I mean, I don't know what they got with the goal line. I don't know what's their issues with the goal line and being in big games and trying to score at the goal line. I don't know what it is, but Dre Greenlaw for a 5th round pick to still be on your team, who's still solid, who made that play, obviously a good player when healthy. Not B plus, A minus. I would say A minus, and then obviously because of that Seattle game, just wow. And another Seattle moment that I would say is underrated was we were losing to Seattle Monday night. We were undefeated, the last undefeated team, and we make that comeback. DeForest Buckner has that strip sack. We score the touchdown, and then in overtime they're about to score. And then Dre Greenlaw makes that interception. And if only Robbie Gould was playing. If only Robbie Gould was playing, we would have been 9-0. Maybe the Niners should have drafted another kicker in round 4 instead of Mitch Wishnowski. But yeah, I would say A minus.
Yeah, for sure. He's a good player.
Moving on to the last 3 picks, round 6, pick 176, Caden Smith, tight end. I mean, I don't even think he made the roster. I think he got cut. I'm not sure if he made the roster.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a D, but see, the thing is like, if I'm grading his career, I'd probably go C because he got cut by us, but he went on to play for the Giants.
Yep.
Started multiple games, started games even last year for them. So, yeah, I mean, as a player, it's C, solid C, maybe even a C plus, but for the 49ers, it's a D because you're right, he didn't take a snap for him.
Yeah, so for the 49ers, I would say I agree with you. It's probably a D, but if you're grading his overall NFL career, like you said, he started some games for the Giants last year. He's had a solid NFL career. For a 6th round pick, had a solid NFL career. So if we're grading him strictly for the Niners, I would say D. But if we're grading him overall, I would say maybe like a C. He's not bad. Moving on, Justin School, round 6, pick 183. If I had to grade this pick, I would say probably a C, a solid C, if not a C plus. Because Justin School he started some games for the 49ers. And for a 6th round pick to make your roster and to be pretty solid when playing, that's good value. So C plus, probably a C plus.
Yeah, I agree. C plus is exactly where I was at with it because that 2019 season was shaky. Could have been shaky. Joe Staley went down for some games, and who came in and played for him? None other than Justin School. Played well, played beyond serviceable. Still on this roster. Yeah, I mean this is a good player for a 6th-round pick.
Yeah, moving on to the last pick of the day. I appreciate you for joining me. I know this is an hour and 40-minute stream, and on the East Coast, it's 11:01 right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate you for joining me this long, Jessie. But we made it to the end. The last pick of the day, round 6, pick 198, Tim Harris Jr.
I'll go D plus. I mean,
Yeah.
he contributed on teams from a practice squad type player. He made an active roster for a few games, was called up for a few games for the 49ers, called up for a game or two for Cleveland. I mean, again, this late in the draft, you're taking complete flyers, and to me, if you can make it on a I'll even go C minus. Again, if you can make it on a roster this late in the draft, an active roster, like that's worth something. So,
Yeah.
C
I
minus,
mean,
C
not
plus.
really that much, not really that much tape on Tim Harris Jr.
No, 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 no.
But overall, for a 6th-round pick, he was the last pick in the 49ers. He's the last pick that the 49ers made in 2019. I would say, like you said, D plus, C minus. Not bad. Not bad. I mean, didn't really show much, but I mean, you can't really expect your last pick of the draft or late 6th-rounders to show you anything really. But to make the roster, not a bad pick by the 49ers and not bad value either. Brian Culp says Robbie Gould is great, but doesn't do kickoff. Mitch Wishnowski does kickoff duty. That is a good point, I guess. But that basically wraps up the show. I appreciate you for joining me, Jessie. Now, if you didn't already know, which I think probably the whole chat knows, Jessie has a channel, Last Second Sports. One of my favorite Niner content creators and one of my favorite Niner channels or just NFL channels in general. If you haven't already subscribed to Last Second Sports, go subscribe to Last Second Sports. The link is in the description. If you don't already follow Jessie on Twitter, it's right there at Jessie at JNALSS _ LSS. Go follow him on Twitter. His co-host Rad, who's a Lions fan, it's Niners and Lions fan, but that's mixed channel. They both cover, the Last Second Sports covers both teams. If you haven't already followed Rad, his co-host, his Twitter link is also in the description. And Jessie is monetized on YouTube. He has a channel membership. Go join Jessie's channel membership. Go become a member. That link is also in the description. Go check out Last Second Sports on Instagram. That link is also in the description. Go check them out on TikTok. Jessie has been posting more on the TikTok lately. So go check that out. Go follow them on TikTok. That link is also in the description. And then lastly, go cop yourself some fire merch. Jessie has some fire Trey Lance merch, hoodies, shirts, sweatshirts, phone cases, I'm pretty sure now. Jessie has all of it. And if you're also a Lions fan, you got some Jeff Okuda merch also. So go check out some fire merch. Go cop some fire merch. That link is also in the description. Go follow him on YouTube. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. Follow him on Twitter. Go show him some love and buy that fire merch before it's all sold out, because that merch is clean. And then lastly, tomorrow I will be back with another stream with Vish at 6 o'clock PST. So go tune in tomorrow, back again with the legendary Vish Kumaran. And I appreciate you all for joining me, Bryant, Not Your Average Sports Kid. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for joining me, Jessie. I know it's late for you.
Hey, no problem, man. I enjoyed it.
And we'll see you all tomorrow. Not next time, tomorrow with Vish. Later. Peace.